The burn was very challenging, in terms of all the preparations that had to go in, from getting permits to construct fire lines in wetlands, to putting the whole package together with burn approval with different agencies, state agency, federal agency, Nature Conservancy. I was not really experienced in having aircraft on prescribed burns, so that sort of added another layer of complexity. We had no fallback lines. It was a preserve that was, we had 5 miles of the coast across, and we picked out an area that had been disturbed a little bit in the past and had somewhat of a perimeter line, a ditch surrounding the area, but the ditch would not have been sufficient to contain the fire if it had gotten out. So the potential for the fire to get fairly large and then burn into timber plantations was there, so we really worked on conditions when we would not have very likely severe fire behavior and spread, even though we burned under extreme drought or pretty dry conditions. Oh yes, we did modeling, but the models are really, they're a nice tool that you put in burn plans, but nobody really would hang their hat on these, on predicting fire behavior in these precautions.
Because?
Well, the models are designed to predict fire behavior under extreme conditions, but we were trying to, not go for the full extreme conditions, but, first finding somewhat, moderate wind speed and moderate humidities. So it would not be just, extremely dangerous to burn a foot of peat off. So, and there's so much smoke from these fires, and it's in a flat terrain. So really assessing rates of spread in these fires is very difficult. But it's just very difficult. I always use the models, and I always use them for prescriptions, but I do not trust them. Very difficult concept to get across to folks who have not seen fire in those areas is that fire burns over water. So just because the ground can be wet, it does not mean that it may not take off on you. So for people who are used to burn in marshes and so forth, that's, would come more natural, but for other folks, that's a really difficult concept to get across. Relative humidity, matters a fair bit. And it's not just the day of the burn, but before, and the same, is with wind conditions. So those are probably temperature, relative humidity, wind, precipitation, amount, and sort of duration. Everything plays together, and it's a very complex decision, and that's why I think some of the composite fire danger tools like energy release component come really into play. I mean, I make the first assessment usually remotely because I'm not, on the site. So I'm looking at the weather data, I'm looking at past fuels, how they were tracking, I'm looking at when the last precipitation was, I'm looking at all the values. And then on the site, I always, check my fuels. I put my fingers in there. I wish there was an easy way of how I can assess, fuel moistures when I'm out there. Yeah. Well, I mean, there's the rules of thumb. If you bend your pine needles, and they just, nicely bend, you're somewhere in the, 15, 20%, and, if you're really getting down, and it's going to be, very interesting fire behavior. It's when they break very readily, and you're sort of getting, 10% or less fuel moisture. But it's even more subtle, and I know I've gotten some strange looks from that, but, walking through your fuels, it makes a certain sound. And then it's just easy to sometimes, grab the wrong data set. We had one problem where on a burn, we burned with an old weather forecast. And nobody noticed it. And, it was somebody, who's always very good on the weather and, always watches the weather. And, just because of that, it didn't occur anybody to question that person. Nobody double checked and nobody looked. And, if we're burning for a few days or you're watching the weather for a few days, it's so easy with everything going on, all the complexity, to run out and grab the wrong forecast. And then if you don't double check, all of us make mistakes. This could have happened, just as much to me, so. Well, I guess I sort of, set out my expectations, and I'm trying to explain my expectations, what I'm expecting in terms of fire behavior and in terms of progress. So if I'm trying to explain my expectations, then I'm hoping that other people will also have those expectations. And if I've been able to establish a dialogue that I can get some feedback, and then I want some feedback, then I have other pairs of eyes out there that will help me monitor this. For example, after the lesson I learned with not having the right weather, I'm giving the weather and all the forecasting predictions to the person that I'm designing to do weather and fire behavior, so that they can look at it and they will actually report and read the weather that was forecast and compare it with the actual weather. So that's my second set of eyes. Be always willing to ask questions. Be ready to always be surprised. Check your assumptions. That's 3.
Yeah, okay.
The things that get you in trouble are the things that you think you know and you don't know.